Some people have been asking for me to clarify my opinions on Bitcoin because I've previously talked about purchasing Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation and even advocated for it as a percentage allocation of your portfolio. Yet recently, I've had a more bearish tone on Bitcoin, and it seems people are also under the impression that I might be against Bitcoin. So I kind of want to clear this up because I'm neither for nor against Bitcoin, believe it or not. Bitcoin is an interesting proposition. The idea of a currency that can't create itself, that nobody can interfere with at all, is interesting, especially in this high inflation environment. And I've advocated for Bitcoin as a hedge against the dollar because if there are concerns about the dollar, which I believe will happen in the future, people will begin to talk about Bitcoin as a possible alternative currency. Yet, at its current valuation, so the price of Bitcoin times all the Bitcoin in existence, Bitcoin is currently valued at the same price of the Mexican peso and the Swiss franc, roughly the same price, yet possesses a fraction of the buying power. What gives a currency value is its use as a medium of exchange. Yet Bitcoin is not a medium of exchange. Right now, all you can do with Bitcoin is sell it for a different medium of exchange. It's essentially a game of hot potato at this moment. Yet it is possible that a currency decides to vanish and use Bitcoin. There are advantages to using Bitcoin. However, there are also many downsides to using Bitcoin. One, we are currently in a global pandemic. In the United States, we have had an economic crisis, but it has been largely averted from what could have happened. We've had employment rise very quickly and recover from very sharp lows. We had a lending market that looked in danger of freezing and could have possibly led us down serious economic consequences that could have lasted for a very long time. And we would be in a very different position if we couldn't do something so combative to Bitcoin called printing money. The ability to print money can actually prove to be a good thing, especially in times of crisis, when the United States government needs money or various other needs that require money. Printing of money has gotten countries out of crises in many instances throughout history. However, it also has the potential to be abused. Countries like Venezuela, Zimbabwe, corrupt organizations will print money because it's a power they have. The United States has implemented a policy against this, and that's the separation of the government and the Federal Reserve, which is able to print money and has a mandate of price stability, so not too much printing of money that prices become unstable, and maximum unemployment. Good things to have a mandate for, especially for the body required and only body in charge of printing money. With Bitcoin, if we weren't able to print money, we would have no way of quickly averting a crisis, and a crisis could just continue to snowball downward and get worse and worse. Yet we were able to stabilize the fall at the beginning of the pandemic and lead us to a gradual and relatively strong recovery that is helping us avoid catastrophe for almost the entire country. Obviously, there are people still hurting, but it could have been way worse. I can guarantee you that. Now, let's say we did adopt Bitcoin in a good environment with no need to have printing of money. Let's put the printing of money aside. In order to adopt Bitcoin, we need society to adopt Bitcoin. That means people need to adopt it as a medium of exchange. That's something they're willing to give their goods for and trade with. If we are to use Bitcoin, we will have the greatest inequality society has ever seen. There are people who have purchased some 10, 50,000 Bitcoin a long time ago. There are billionaires who bought it in around 10 to 15,000 range, bought it, at various stages of its life, and will be holders of a larger allocation of Bitcoin than they are holders of percent allocation to the US dollar, meaning the 1% will have a greater control over Bitcoin than they do over the US dollar. And given that people have problems with how much of the total US dollar in circulation 1% of the population has, they will certainly have that same problem with Bitcoin, given that 1% will have an even greater percentage control over the circulation of that Bitcoin. In addition, there will be no way to dilute that 1%. Hypothetically, we can dilute that 1% in the US dollar, and we are technically doing that to an extent with the stimulus checks. If we gave everyone outside that 1% $100,000, the value of the dollars decrease. Those people have more dollars. There's some sort of weird net effect where the other people are getting more dollars and they're losing value in dollars, and the other people are just losing value in dollars. So inequality comes down a little bit. With Bitcoin, that phenomenon is impossible, and it will create the greatest inequality ever. So there are two problems I see with Bitcoin. I see one, the inability to print money in times of crisis and other instances in which it's necessary to print money. And two, the creation of the largest inequality possible, ever imaginable, you name it, ever seen before. Those two reasons are the reasons I believe Bitcoin won't be adopted by society. Do I think Bitcoin is a good idea? I think it's great. I think it's a great thing to have a finite resource that would replace something that could potentially cause serious problems like excess printing of money. Printing money isn't always a good thing. So there is that argument to be made for Bitcoin. But in order for it to justify its current valuation, it needs to have the purchasing power of the Mexican peso and the Swiss franc, and it simply does not have that kind of purchasing power. So from a value perspective, bang for your buck, you're currently overpaying for Bitcoin. From a potential perspective, who knows? Maybe it becomes the world reserve currency. From an investment perspective, it seems to be all over the place. What would I do? I would not advise against a 1% allocation to Bitcoin. The idea of Bitcoin can possibly work. I don't know. Nobody knows. This is a thing in society which may be adopted. I don't think it'll be adopted, but that doesn't mean I'm never owning Bitcoin. I've owned Bitcoin for a long time. I plan on getting a little bit back into Bitcoin, but never being a hardcore Bitcoin bull. I'm never going to be a Bitcoin bull. Take back the word never. I'm never going to be a Bitcoin bull, ceteris paribus, all else equal. If everything remains like it is right now, I will not be a Bitcoin bull. If the fall of government comes, if technology invents something that creates, the massive changes in society that require Bitcoin, of course I will adopt Bitcoin. But right now, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's an overvalued product. And I think a product like gold, which actually has use, demand, prestige, and history behind it, provides the same finite values and interests as Bitcoin, but I trust it more. So I choose gold as my hedge against the dollar, my hedge against inflation, all these kinds of things, in addition to oil and all these other kinds of things. But I'm not afraid of having 1 to 3% of my total portfolio allocation in Bitcoin. And if you want a little bit, if you see the potential Bitcoin possesses, if you think the dollar might go under at some point and be replaced by Bitcoin, don't be afraid to get 1 to 3%. That's what I say. Hope this clears things up. Feel free to drop a comment down below. I will answer your question. So until next time, peace out.